Hi, how you going? I'm Darren from CPR Business Advisory, and today we've also got Paul, who's my business partner.
How you going, guys?
Paul and I are doing a series of podcasts, but I guess first to kick things off, we thought we'd just give you a bit of background on who we are and the level of experience that we've got. So I'm a FCPA. I've been a commercial accountant for the last 25 years, working in numerous industries and business sizes. So from startups to billion-dollar companies. But we also do work with businesses in distress as well to try and help them turn the businesses around.
Yeah, and look, I've probably got a similar background. Again, working with mining companies, billion-dollar turnover, right down to startups to businesses that kind of want to grow. They might be in distress or they want to go to the next level. They haven't got an account in the business. And it's not so much we don't do tax, we don't get involved in tax, but we've got tax specialists that we work with. And I suppose our focus is helping businesses. And, we've both, Darren and I, have had a lot of experience and had some really great mentors over the time. And I suppose that's where now we're looking to say, do these podcasts to, get some of that experience that we've had and help businesses either do it themselves or just come up with some ideas and achieve, their goals, I suppose. That's the aim of this, isn't it, Darren?
Yeah. And it's really, to raise the questions in their mind to, am I doing things the best way to achieve the best results in my business? And I guess that sort of leads into how Paul and I are conducting this first round of podcasts. And we sort of thought we'd break it down and sort of look at people, look at time, and look at cash. So as the introduction to what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that's important, Darren, where I suppose from our experience, it's always businesses have always got opportunities or issues and they kind of relate to one of those three or all three. They don't have enough time in the day. You might be getting up at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, do some training, try and get ahead of the game, in your business, making sure. And then, you get hit with roadblocks as you go along the day and, you kind of get home and you're a bit tired. You might kick the cat and you might not be the happiest person in your home life and your business life. And that makes a big difference. And I've seen that quite often and I'm pretty sure Darren has as well.
Yeah.
So these podcasts are about things that we've experienced that, could be just little tips for you to think about, how to better manage, one of those areas. And today we're just going to do a quick one on time.
Yeah. And the podcast that we're doing is not giving you all the answers. Like, we're not trying to give answers today. We're sort of just raising some high level points to just make you think about processes and components of the time element. So, we're going to break the podcast of time down into sort of 4 key areas, which is around, training is always one, systems is another one, your processes, and also your communication.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and I'll just start with training. And I suppose this kind of comes into teams as well, Darren, where, you've got businesses that, a business that I work with, they were inducting people every couple of days. They didn't do it as a group induction. And so what was happening was, as people were trying to, both admin and operational people, they were always conducting interviews and I've got an interview, this guy wants to start. And what was happening was that's just the distraction to the day. And so, looking at that business, we said, well, you're doing the same activity, you're telling the same story, just do a recording like this. You send them the link, you go through where everything is, and this was a multi-site business. So you would say, right, do an induction for site A, site B, and site C, and wherever they were going, that's where you would do the induction. And instead of having, people doing it 3 times a week, you would do it once a week once they watch this video or the video for their location. And the amount of time that saves, you don't realise. If an induction on the full amount takes 30 minutes and you're doing 3 in a day, there's an hour and a half of your day. So, and you're doing that 3 times a week. So if you can streamline that and put them even in a group where they all sit down, you do the induction in one go, all the paperwork's collected in one go, everything's complete in one go, and it's all sent to HR. There's no going backwards and forwards because you're focused on it for that period of time. So I'm sure Darren's got, you've got other examples there that as well, don't you?
Well, yeah, and I mean, it also can be used for small business as well as larger businesses, because small business, you're going to take key personnel out of their everyday activity, which is basically trying to create business or bring in revenue, and you're actually taking them off the floor. So, if you do these pre-recordings, you're actually not, it's more efficiencies at the time, but you're not taking critical people out of the business to basically facilitate an induction. It also is a good onboarding process. So the experience for your new employees coming in is basically a pleasurable experience. Like, they're getting all the information they need about the business. So they're basically hitting the ground running, as opposed to, slowly learning bits and pieces, which takes, a lot longer to sort of ramp up to be able to be, a valued employee.
Yeah. And look, one of those things, again, is this business, needed staff. It is seasonal business as it grew. And what happened, we ended up doing groups of 20. They would come at this particular time. They would do the induction, and then that would kind of be staggered over, everything in that induction. And those videos were about, where the lunchrooms are, where the toilets are, what time's your break, how do you log in, how do you do this, what do you do, clock in, clock out, all the OH&S. So, and they had to sign it off so that they'd watched the video and known about it. So, and the efficiency in that is, especially in a seasonal business, you've already got your workforce done in groups.
Yeah. And I mean, it also leads into like departmental training as well. So, like, using these recordings, you can also, and I recommend doing it for instructional videos for actual department activities. So, it could be a back end office training for particular positions, or it can be actually for the front end. So either a sales force, or even for, site personnel.
Yeah, and funny you should say that, because there was a role that I was in there as a contractor for until they found a new employee. And what actually happened was, as I was, and it's about doing it as you go. So the videos, the month-end process, every time I did the month-end process or a part of the month-end process, I would sit there, record it and talk about it and say, and talking about it is different than taking screenshots and typing it, because you can quite easily say, and you've got to look out for X, Y, and Z, because if this happens, and we do this because of these 3 reasons, rather than reading it and going, well, why do you do it like that? It's more conversational, and that's what I found. What you, Darren? Yeah,
definitely, and it's more personable. People will tend to absorb it, I should say, a lot more, and it's something they can refer to again and again. So, people often
limits the questions that they're going to ask you.
Yeah, exactly. So you could actually sort of throughput that. And it sort of answer a lot of their questions. And I find having, say, a printout or a hard copy, they end up outdating, and you end up with about 14 different copies of instructions or onboarding processes. that are sort of almost like paperweights left on a desk, and then they're outdated. That way you've got a central depository for this, and then you just update the videos as you go. So you don't have that problem of control over content control.
Yeah, and the thing is, it can be a live series, you know, and another thing that I know that we do quite often, Darren, is we record meetings that we're in, because for me personally, the time to sit there and take notes and concentrate and everything else, I find that I'd rather have the conversation. And when we onboard clients with CPR and have meetings and interviews and things, we have that so we can talk about it, and then we go back and refer to it, so we get the most out of the time. It's not time wasting for the clients, for us, and that's using it in our business, let alone, you know, in other businesses where you can do it. So
yeah, and I think it also works if you use third-party vendors to bring in a new skill set into the business. It's always good to get them to come in, but I recommend that you sort of record these as well.
Yeah.
So one, you get the training as the people are doing it, which is firsthand, but if it's recorded, you can then reuse it for a part of your induction process. And it's money well spent. You've gone down the path of actually spending good money to get a third party in to do very good training. You might as well capitalize on that and record it so that you can actually refer to it at a later date as well.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. And I think that kind of also comes into where you've got third parties. You know, we were talking to a client the other day where they've got a new system coming in. They've just pulled out a system. They're going to put in this new system. They've got third party coming in, and one guy in the business knows everything, but this guy's coming in to do some third party training. If that one guy in their business knows everything about the system, then a training video with a third party and them, if he's away sick, you can just refer to it, and business doesn't stop there.
Yeah, and you relieve the risk of, if you've just got one champion in the business and then all of a sudden they leave, you lose that knowledge. But I guess that also then flows in. So the training element also then flows into systems. So, you know, with those training manuals, you then also have to look at the systems but also processes, which is the following point, but the systems that are used. So, you know, we have had multiple clients where, you know, they lose a lot of time because they've got multiple systems running, and the amount of work that's required to do reconciliations, and also a lot of it's paper-based. Yeah. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think we're, you know, with apps now, you can just a simple data entry app with very simple processes. You know, like we always joke about, you know, these people that don't want to use systems in the businesses or iPads or iPhones, you know, it's too hard to do. But, you know, quite often they can bet on the third race at Doomben and put on number 4 and put $20 on the nose, and they can do that while they're driving along in a car. But they don't, you know, they need to use an app to record data. And what that does is it's live. It doesn't, there's no chance of people, I didn't do it yesterday. I think I did it. You know, the dog ate my homework, the paper, you know, it got crunched up. Someone wasn't here yesterday and they didn't do it. And then there's the added fact that you might not actually, there might be an error in the input from just a transposition error.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, it's a very good point, because I see in a lot of businesses where time is wasted is the breakdown between, say, your back office, or what I call site office staff. So, you know, people that actually have to deal with the transactions, but also then your site guys, you know, the people that are on the tools or out there. There's often a disconnect. Like the site guys will have really good systems and they can do their job efficiently, and then back office guys have really good systems, but the two actually don't talk. Or there's multiple systems, and the amount of time that you can waste, but then also the amount of money that you can actually burn through, because there's a disconnect between the two systems.
Yeah. Oh, look, and further to that, like the disconnect is, you know, say you've got site guys they might put in a variation for a different product. The office hasn't got it, on a paper-based system. It doesn't get to them in time, or it gets made. Then you go into liquidated damages. The amount of times that I've seen product made twice for the same job, or product delivered twice for the same order is amazing. So,
and you're adding to that whole, variation not actually being put onto an invoice. So therefore, you're actually eroding your margin because you're not actually charging for work that's done because it got missed.
Yeah. And look, being productive is one thing, but missing a variation is just it's crazy.
And you're right, and it's just a simple system that needs to be put in place and adhered to, basically. But you even just look at the security and say passwords, like the amount of time that is wasted in businesses just because you don't have a secure central spot for passwords for particular programs that are used across the business, or they're not updated, is just, it does my head in.
Oh, look, there's so many systems, and then someone will log in and it's under their login and they're away today. So what was the password? I don't know. We need to reset it. Oh, we can't. Now we've got to get into the email. So now we have to reset the email password. And then they say, hang on, someone's hacked my email account because I've got a password change. And so it just becomes so inefficient and so unproductive.
It does. And you don't want the business sharing passwords in the sense of the word either, because cybersecurity is a big problem these days. And the amount of time that you'll waste, and even, it can be employees too. If you've got a disgruntled employee leaving, you have control over this, and the amount of time that you'll waste trying to work out, what's happened. So it's really that whole system-based process around it. So
and but it's passwords that, it can be business Facebook accounts, it can be their website. It doesn't necessarily mean their accounting system. It's everything. It's you can change a password and log them out of their system. It's all the little things that you don't have at the top of your mind when someone leaves.
Oh, exactly. And I mean, it comes down to the actual system that you use. So it could be, LastPass as a password protector, but you want to have systems that actually interact with each other to get rid of the manual input. So you'll have, the financial system, you'll potentially have a HR system, there's so many different systems running around it. And I don't necessarily say that you've got to get it all in one too, because one system can't do everything, but you want them to be able to interact with each other. But I guess that then leads into the next point, which is, the processes that are behind, your systems that you implement. So, everyone says, okay, systems and processes. Well, systems is really just a tool, but then the processes are what people do when using the tool. So, that is the next point that we sort of look at, because you can waste a lot of time with poorly derived processes as well.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and I think it kind of comes back down to maybe even training videos like we started with, where processes are documented and you don't need to make a big deal of making a process, as long as the process works. And a lot of the time, I think people overcomplicate a process when it should be just a simple process. It can be recorded and referred to all the time. Yeah.
And I mean, if we go into businesses, or we have gone into businesses, you always look at, we classify as almost like front office and back office. So front office looking at, the salespeople, or your site guys, so your tradies, whoever's out of the coal face. And then you got your back office, which is, your beanies, bean counters, and, your admin, your HR, it's basically what actually drives the back end. So there's always the disconnect between the processes, between those two departments to start with, I think.
Yeah, a lot of breakdown there, especially when say you've got manufacturing business where you've got installers. So then there's a breakdown with the office and installers. There's a breakdown with the manufacturing process and installers, wrong size, it's not labeled correctly. How did this product leave this building?
Yeah.
And then you've got the disconnect between the manufacturing and the back office. So even a simple manufacturing business to put some cupboards in a place is, if that isn't right, you're just losing opportunity. You're missing quotes. You're missing revenue, and it's just crazy, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, we go into say back office, and you look at, I think most businesses will understand pretty clearly. You've got accounts payable and accounts receivable. And I mean, if you don't manage the two and they're independent, but then you've got to look at both, then you're effectively managing your cash flow. And, as they say, cash is king. So you need to have the right processes so that you understand the liquidity of your business at any point in time to understand, where are my collections at? Like, how many invoices is outstanding? How are they moving, into aged debt, and versus, what have I got to pay? Am I going to have enough cash to pay it? Have I actually invoiced for all the work that's been done? And this is where, the back office is heavily dependent on the front office, because they've actually been talking to the client. They know if the client's going to pay a little bit later, but if the back office doesn't know and they've got a major payment that's going to come out, but they can't because they haven't invoiced it, there's always that process that is falling apart.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think one of the, I'll give you an example is we ordered some dishes from a very expensive business where you're paying a premium, and that's my wife, not me. And we actually got, with the day one, or we got a delivery, and it was these dishes. Anyway, the next day we got exactly the same order, the same, and we paid for it once. And from a business owner's perspective, that's horrible. You're just giving all that away. So whatever you made on the first product, you've given away. How many times does that happen in a business? It doesn't even matter if it's an expensive product or not. It's the fact that that product was delivered twice.
Yeah. And, we can go on all day about, processes, but at the end of the day, you want your processes to work for you so that, one, you can calculate your profitability or even your break even. So, understand clearly what your overheads are, but if you don't have the right processes in place, information, as Paul sort of just pointed out, like 2 items were dispatched, but it's only been invoiced once. You don't really have a real clear understanding of what your monthly results are. And, people will often look at their P&L and say, oh, I'm making a shitload of money, but their cash is not reflecting this. And a lot of the time, it's because your systems and processes in the background are actually breaking down. So you're actually not visibly seeing where the problem is. So, your cash flow management just goes out the window. So you really need to look at your processes that are actually talking to each other.
Yeah, and look, that's exactly right. Like it's one of those things with a process. If you put a new process in, or you review a process, or it's inspect what you expect, and you should be always going back down through those processes, because if you put a new process in place and people have a tendency to go back to the old way that they were doing it, you've got to inspect what you expect, because you're not going to get the result. Just keep an eye on that process and review it, and a lot of those are, simple things like, I'll give you an example where they had an outdated price list. They had a new price list, but they had an outdated price list that they were using because they didn't destroy the old price list. Now, that's not a difficult thing to do, but that can have a massive impact where you're thinking, I've had a price increase, especially over COVID time, where supply is an issue, and you've got outdated price books, and you're losing 7% of your revenue.
Yeah, and I mean that really leads into the next bit. I mean, if you don't have clear communication around your processes or the change in a process or even change in pricing, communication is sort of the fourth, I guess, large component of time that can be wasted. Like if you've got poor communication, and this can be both internal and external, well then you're losing efficiencies there. And I mean, you end up with your internal staff going around not knowing what they're doing or haven't implemented a price increase. But then also it's how you project your company on the external people too, so your customer base. So, it's very much related to the communication of any processes, so especially internally.
Yeah, and I think that's just to kind of come back to it's all about time. Like everything is about time. The processes are incorrect, they're cumbersome. It's time for that person to, it takes them time to do a process that's inefficient or non-value adding, and we've all heard that and everything else. So when you look at communicating in a business, and I've had this a number of times where, and that's why I said before, we always record the meetings, because you go, I remember he said something about that, but you might not, you're too busy writing it down. Or if someone is in a meeting and they don't, they're not good note takers, at least they can go back to, because you don't want people coming back to you. You're in a meeting, you've held a meeting, team meeting, and those people come back to you. There's 5 people in it, and 3 of them come back to you and ask you a question. Well, hang on, that's time. Weren't you in the meeting? Weren't you in the meeting? Weren't you in the meeting? Well, here's the recording of the meeting. Go and find that part and look at it. So you're freeing your time up, because you don't want to waste lots of people's time.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. But when the way I look at it as well, and I actually say this in business that I've worked in like in the past, and it's like, communications need to be clear and concise. And basically my motto is there should be no surprises. So, if you've got a problem and it's identified early enough, then you can actually work through it, save a shitload of time and money, and actually minimize the impact and fix the problem. But if your staff or even yourself are ignoring the problem, then it festers and potentially costs you a lot. And then you'll spend so much time trying to work out what's actually gone wrong, where it's got broken down. And half the time it's just the communication. Like if you tell your staff, no surprises, like, yes, you're fucking going to get...
Everyone gets egg on their face.
Just man up, say,
man up. And that's the other part, which is the team aspect. You got to make sure you've got the right team, but you got to make sure that you've got, and this will be in a later podcast, about your team and about the ability. Don't tell half truths. When someone's training someone for a new role, you say, what should I not show them? And you think, well, they're going to have to guess that part. So we all make mistakes, and that's what it is.
Oh, and it's just communication. It's the culture around communication. So I think, when we talk about people in the next podcast, it is very much focused around, the right communications, the right culture, the right people. But it comes back, and that's where it still comes back to time. Like, how much time do you waste by having the incorrect components?
Yeah. Oh, look, I've seen business owners in all sizes of business, getting interrupted all the time because people haven't listened or haven't communicated correctly. And, a lot of, in a lot of businesses, how much time inefficiency and errors are self-inflicted. I would say, there's some businesses that I've been in and said, we're our own worst enemy. We're not getting supply issues. We're not doing anything. All our inefficiencies and time that we spend running around doing 12-hour days is all self-inflicted.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, it's also, what you're projecting on your external customers. Like if you've got poor efficiencies, and like my pet hate is people that don't respond to emails, like internally, but more so if you're a customer externally, if you don't hear from say, a supplier, somebody that you're trying to buy stuff off, are you going to really want to do business with them in the future? Do you want to go back to them? You're losing customers straight up just because of inefficiencies. And now, communication, your staff, if they're communicating, they should be prompt and respond to customers' requests. Even if it's bad news, customers will respect you coming back to them.
100%.
That's our high-level view. There are a multitude of points under each of those 4 topics that we've just spoke about today that we can expand with, and we do, and we probably will in future podcasts. But we just want to give you a bit of a flavour on, what we're looking at, and what we want to help, I guess, put out there for people to, I guess, think about.
Yeah, and look, I suppose going back to one of the earlier points is being a commercially focused CFO and CPA. It's about not just sitting in the business looking at the accounts. It's not about business coaching. It's about getting, you could have a dysfunctional finance team. You could have a business that, you listen to this podcast and go, right, yep, that is me. This is what happening, in my business. And that's where we can come and say, right, we've seen a number of solutions across a number of businesses, and everyone, responds differently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, hopefully somebody got something out of this, and Paul and I just didn't waste half an hour of our time where I could have been having a beer at the pub. But, well, thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Keep safe, and hope business is going well.
Yeah, have a good one.
Have a good one.